The house loomed before Liam like a monument carved from grief. Its brick facade gleamed in the late autumn light, the lawn trimmed with military precision. Everything about it spoke of control, order, and permanence. But to Liam, it was nothing more than a mausoleum, his father's mausoleum. Robert Thorne, Judge Robert Thorne, had built his life around appearances. The house was an extension of his authority, every manicured hedge a verdict, every polished window a sentence. Liam had never called it home. He had called it the house, even as a boy. Stepping inside was like stepping back into a past that had never wanted him. The air was heavy, faintly perfumed with cedar polish and old books. Conversations hummed in low tones as black-clad mourners filled the living room. Neighbors, colleagues, former clerks, all speaking of the judge with reverence. Such a pillar of the community. A man of principle. A legacy to be proud of. Liam adjusted the stiff collar of his suit. It felt like a costume, something borrowed, something that didn't fit. His hands, calloused from years of guitar strings and endless rehearsals, looked out of place against the silk. He wanted to run them across wood and steel, not fold them politely in a room full of whispers. From across the room, he saw Ethan. His brother moved with the easy grace of a man who belonged. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed, Ethan was their father's echo made flesh. He shook hands, clasped shoulders, accepted condolences with calm dignity. Their mother, Helen, stood beside him, her grief a mask of poise. Every so often, she touched Ethan's arm, a small, tender reminder of where her pride had always rested. She hadn't touched Liam once. When the funeral ended, when the last mourner had drifted into the grey November afternoon, the family gathered in the judge's study. The room was everything Robert Thorne had ever been. Dark mahogany shelves heavy with law books, leather chairs polished to a military shine, a desk large enough to dwarf any man who sat behind it. The curtains were drawn, muting the afternoon light. The lawyer, a family friend with thinning hair and a somber voice, opened a folder. Robert was a man of order, he began. His will is clear. Liam already knew. He braced himself as the words fell like stones. The estate and all its holdings shall be left to my eldest son, Ethan Thorne, who has proven himself a worthy heir to the family name and legacy. Ethan nodded, solemn, as though accepting a sacred duty. Helen's hand tightened briefly on his arm. Liam stared at the rug. A familiar hot flush of shame climbed his neck. Not disappointment, no, he had learned long ago not to expect anything else from his father. But the finality of it still struck him like a hammer. Even in death, Robert Thorne had chosen Ethan. The lawyer cleared his throat. There is one more matter. His eyes flicked toward Liam. To my younger son, Liam Thorne, I leave this. He slid a cream-colored envelope across the desk. It was thick, sealed with wax, heavy in Liam's hand. Ethan leaned back, pity written across his face. Helen offered a brittle smile. That's very nice, dear. A memento. Liam said nothing. He left the room, clutching the envelope like it might dissolve if he let go. His old bedroom hadn't changed. The same narrow bed, the same faded posters he had taped to the walls as a teenager. They looked childish now, rebellious rock bands glaring out from behind glass, defiance frozen in time. He sat on the edge of the bed and tore the envelope open with shaking fingers. Inside was a key, small, ornate, cold against his palm. And a note, written in his father's precise, elegant handwriting. Find the truth in the music. Liam frowned. Music. His father had never once spoken of music with anything but polite indifference. He had tolerated Liam's guitar playing the way one tolerates a neighbor's barking dog. With weary patience, and the unspoken hope it might stop someday. His pulse quickened. The study. He returned, quiet as a ghost, while Ethan and Helen's voices murmured beyond the hall. Closing the door, he scanned the bookshelves. Something tugged at his memory, an odd gap in the row of legal volumes. He pressed against it. Click. The panel shifted. A door revealed itself. The key fit perfectly. Liam stepped into darkness. The air inside was different, cooler, scented faintly of dust and something older, something sweeter. He flicked the light. The room was small, soundproofed, intimate. And at its center stood a grand piano, polished though unused, a silent sentinel of a hidden life. On its surface lay stacks of sheet music, a worn leather case, and journals bound in cracked leather. A framed photograph rested on a side table, a young Robert Thorne, his face open, smiling, standing proudly beside a piano. Liam's breath caught. He opened the first journal. His father's handwriting sprawled across the pages, not in legal rulings, but in musical notations, reflections, dreams. The piano is my escape. Each chord a breath, each melody a prayer. Someday, I will play for the world. The entries grew darker as the years passed. Father says it is foolish. He insists I study law. He does not understand that music is not a choice. It is a voice. Then, abruptly, the final entry. He has won. The music dies today. The sun is now the judge. Liam staggered back, the journal trembling in his hands. His father, the judge, the man of silence and stern disapproval, had been a musician. Like him. His passion had been crushed, his life redirected by force, and in that breaking, he had buried not only his music, but his ability to love. It wasn't indifference. It was fear. Liam had been a mirror his father couldn't bear to face. Liam didn't sleep that night. The journals sat open on the bed, pages splayed like wounds. His father's handwriting danced before his eyes, the notes, the words, the longing. It was like listening to a ghost confess in whispers. By dawn, Liam knew he couldn't keep it hidden. The truth wasn't just his. He walked downstairs, carrying the leather case and one of the journals. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound louder. In the dining room, sunlight poured through tall windows, gilding the table where Helen sat with her tea. Ethan entered moments later, scrolling on his phone, his cufflinks catching the light. Liam placed the case on the table with a thud. Ethan frowned. What's that supposed to be? Helen looked up, irritation flickering across her face. Liam, must you make a scene? We've had enough dramatics. Liam ignored her. He opened the case. Inside lay stacks of sheet music, yellowed with age. He placed the journal beside it, flipping to a page written in Robert's bold hand. The piano is my escape. Each chord a breath, each melody a prayer. Someday, I will play for the world. Helen's cup clattered against the saucer. Ethan blinked. This, Liam's voice broke, but he steadied it. This is who he was. A musician. Not just a judge, not just some untouchable man carved out of stone. He wanted this. Music. And he buried it because he was forced to. Ethan scoffed. What are you saying? That father wanted to play piano at cocktail bars instead of serving justice. Don't be ridiculous. Liam snapped the journal shut, his palm stinging. Don't you get it? He killed a part of himself to become what everyone demanded. And he hated me because I refused to do the same. Helen's lips tightened, her voice sharp. Your father made sacrifices for this family. He chose duty. That was strength. No, Liam said, his voice raw now. That was surrender. And he punished me for reminding him of what he lost. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan finally leaned forward, his expression hard. So what, Liam? What do you want out of this? Pity? Money? Some grand revelation that redeems you? I don't want redemption, Liam shot back. His hands trembled, but his voice rose with a strength he hadn't known was there. I want the truth. I want us to stop pretending that he was some flawless saint while he was dying inside. And maybe, his throat tightened, maybe I want you to admit that I'm not the failure he said I was. I carry the part of him that was real. Helen's face softened for the first time, her eyes glistening. She looked away quickly, but her silence spoke louder than words. Ethan pushed back his chair, jaw tight. You're rewriting history, because you can't stand being second best. Father chose me. He trusted me. Liam met his gaze. No. He settled for you. He left me the key. That landed like a strike. Ethan's face flickered, shock, then anger, then something darker. Helen whispered, almost to herself, he left you the key. For a long moment, the room held its breath. The tension in the dining room was unbearable. The journals, the sheet music, the key, they sat between the three of them like weapons laid on a battlefield. Liam's chest rose and fell, his pulse still pounding from the words he had thrown like daggers. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, but Ethan stood rigid, his jaw set, his pride unshaken. Liam knew talk wouldn't be enough. Words had always failed in this house. But music might cut through where nothing else could. Without another word, he scooped up the sheet music and walked down the hall. Ethan called after him. Where the hell are you going now? To the only place he ever lived, Liam said over his shoulder. He unlocked the hidden door once more, the old hinges groaning as though the house itself objected. The room beyond glowed faintly in the dim light, the grand piano waiting like a relic of a forgotten god. Helen gasped softly when she saw it. Her hand flew to her mouth. Robert. She whispered, as if the name itself could summon him back. Ethan followed, his usual confidence faltering at the sight of his father's secret sanctuary. Liam sat at the piano, laying the yellowed sheet music across the stand. His fingers hovered over the keys. They trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of everything pressing down on him, his father's silence, his mother's lies, his brother's arrogance. Then, slowly, he began to play. The first notes rang out, soft but haunting, filling the air like breath in a tomb. The melody was raw, incomplete, his father's unfinished work. Liam let it flow, his hands shaping chords that swelled with longing, anger, sorrow. The room seemed to come alive, the dust dancing in shafts of light, the walls trembling as if the house itself remembered. Helen broke first. She sobbed openly, clutching the back of a chair for support. I begged him to stop. I begged him to bury it, for his own good, and he did. For me. For this family. Liam's voice rose above the music. And in doing so, he buried himself. Ethan stood frozen, his expression shifting with every measure of the song, confusion, denial, and finally something Liam had never seen before, recognition. When the last note faded, silence pressed down heavier than before. Liam turned on the bench, eyes glistening. You think he chose you, Ethan? You think being his heir makes you the stronger son? No. He left you the chains. He left me the key. Ethan's face flushed, but he didn't argue. His gaze darted to the journal still open on the table, then back to his brother. For once, he had no rehearsed defense, no perfect words. Helen sank into a chair, tears streaking her face. I thought I was protecting him, she whispered. But all I did was turn him into a ghost. Liam rose slowly, the fire inside him no longer rage, but something steadier, more dangerous. He walked toward Ethan, pressing the sheet music into his chest. Here, Liam said. This is the legacy you were given. The silence. The lies. The house. But this, he tapped his heart, this music, this truth. That belongs to me. Ethan swallowed hard, staring down at the worn pages. His hands trembled, betraying him. For the first time in his life, Liam saw his brother not as the golden heir, but as a frightened child, lost, burdened by a legacy he hadn't chosen. Liam turned back toward the piano, his shadow stretching long across the room. His voice was low, steady, almost prophetic. I'm going to finish what he couldn't. I'll give his music a voice. And when I do, the world will know who Robert Thorne really was. Not the judge. Not the myth. The man. He pressed down one final chord, the sound vibrating through the room like a closing sentence. Then he stood and walked out, leaving Ethan and Helen in the silence his father had once ruled over. But in that silence, a shift had taken place. For the first time, it wasn't Ethan who carried the family's weight. It was Liam. And as he left the house behind, clutching the journals to his chest, one thought burned in his mind like a vow. The concert hall was hushed, its vaulted ceiling arching high like a cathedral. Hundreds of people filled the velvet seats, critics, musicians, students, townsfolk, even members of the court who had once revered Judge Robert Thorne. The name Thorne still carried weight in this city, but tonight, it wasn't the judge they had come to honor. It was his forgotten son. Backstage, Liam stood with his guitar case slung over one shoulder, his tuxedo jacket feeling more like armor than attire. His hands were cold, his pulse a drumbeat in his ears. On the music stand before him lay the symphony he had pieced together over sleepless nights, part his father's, part his own, woven into a single tapestry of loss and defiance. His brother Ethan approached quietly. Gone was the sharp arrogance, the courtroom confidence. He looked smaller somehow, subdued. You don't have to do this, Ethan said, his voice low. If you play this music, you'll tear down everything Dad built. Liam met his gaze. No, Ethan. I'll set him free. Ethan hesitated, his lips parting as if to argue, then closing again. His shoulders sagged. Then, do it. Do it for him. Do it for both of you. When the conductor called his name, Liam stepped into the light. A single spotlight followed him as he crossed the stage to the grand piano. His father's piano. The audience stirred with whispers. Helen sat in the front row, her hands knotted tightly together in her lap, her face pale but resolute. Ethan took the seat beside her, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on his brother. Liam Saturday. For a long moment, he didn't move. He let the silence build, thick and tense, the way his father's house had always felt. Then, slowly, deliberately, he placed his hands on the keys. The first notes rang out, delicate, trembling, like the voice of a ghost awakening. Gasps rippled through the audience. The melody swelled, shifting from sorrow to fury, from fury to hope. It was Robert Thorne's unfinished dream, brought back to life. Liam poured himself into the music. Every disappointment, every rejection, every buried truth vibrated through the hall. The notes soared like wings, then crashed like waves against stone. It wasn't just a performance, it was a reckoning. Halfway through, tears blurred Liam's vision, but he didn't stop. His father's handwriting flickered in his mind, the music dies today. And Liam answered it with his own vow, each keystroke an act of rebellion, the music lives tonight. In the front row, Helen's composure broke. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips as tears streamed freely. Ethan bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. The symphony rose to its climax, a furious storm of sound, dissonant yet beautiful, a duel between what Robert had been forced to become and who he had once wanted to be. Liam's fingers struck the final chords with all the force of his heart. The hall shook with the last echo. Then, silence. The audience was frozen, stunned. For one breathless moment, no one moved. And then, the eruption. Applause thundered through the hall, shouts and cheers rising like a tidal wave. People leapt to their feet, clapping until their hands turned red. Critics who had come with skepticism were now on their feet, stunned into admiration. But Liam didn't look at them. He looked at his mother. Helen stood slowly, her hands trembling as she clapped. Her tears glistened in the stage lights. She whispered, though he couldn't hear it, "I'm sorry, and I'm proud." Ethan stood too, placing a hand on her shoulder. His eyes met Liam's across the hall. For once, they weren't rivals. They were brothers. The applause roared on, but Liam sat there, breathing hard, his hands resting on the keys. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't triumphant. Because he knew the truth. This wasn't the end. The symphony had freed his father's ghost, but it had also opened a wound in the Thorne family name. Tomorrow, newspapers would question the legacy of Judge Robert Thorne. Rumors would spread. Respect would crumble. But Liam didn't care. He had kept the promise his father never could. The silence was broken. The music lived. And as he rose from the bench, bowing to the roaring audience, a single thought burned in his chest. This is only the beginning.